Richard,
go.
you're on
We're
mute.
live, Richard.
Just don't see it. How come I don't see the, good
Look,
evening.
he
I don't
did the
see it, but I'll
countdown.
begin. Okay. My name is Richard Wells and welcome to the regular meeting of the Milton Select Board, Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. I want to begin by calling our meeting to order. We'll be on Zoom tonight. I am joined by Town Administrator Nick Milano, Assistant Town Administrator Nick Corners, Administrative Executive Assistant Linda Napoli, and my colleagues Roxanne Musto, Aaron Bradley, John Colhane, and Ben Zoll. We're going to call to order. I'm going to go to item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance, and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
To the
stands,
republic for which stands
one nation, under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and justice for all.
for all.
Sorry, I stood up. I was on mute. I just started speaking.
I realized
And
that.
Ben kicked
I
in.
wasn't-
I apologize. My
I
bad.
wasn't sure who was talking. To
Item number 4 is, item number 3, excuse me, public comment. I just can't see, can someone bring up on my screen so I can see who's there? Obviously, we have no one in person tonight. Nick, do we have anyone on waiting?
There is a Grant Makers for Education has their hand up. It doesn't have a name, but it has a title.
Go ahead. So if someone could just identify themselves. So public comment, we allow 21 minutes, 3 minutes per speaker. If someone could keep time for me on the 3 minutes, Lynn, if you could do that for me, and then Mr. Milano will hold the 21 minutes total, but hopefully just one. Grant Makers for Education, I see your hand up and you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening. Sorry about that. That's my employer's name.
I recognize the voice. Good evening.
Good evening, Beverly Ross Denny, 107 Columbine Road. I'm here today because I'm concerned that we're underestimating the amount needed for the override. After the 2017 override, the town was forced to lay staff off because insufficient funds are requested for the subsequent fiscal year. I'm here to request that that we do allocate enough funds to cover at least 3 years of expenses, because it's not in our best interest to have funds to cover fiscal year 26 and then ultimately have layoffs in FY 27 and FY 28. I made the similar case last year when I served on the school committee. I also recommend that you consider asking our neighbors for help. I do not know when the pilot committee has last met, but it's my conjecture that our neighbors, including Milton Academy, Curry College, Milton Hospital, and others, might be reluctant to provide any funding for fear of a long-term commitment, but it might be worthwhile asking them for short-term assistance for the next 2 to 3 fiscal years with maybe $1-2 million, never hurts to ask, with the assumption or the commitment of the town to develop long-term commercial revenue opportunities similar to what Select Board Member Zoll has frequently requested. We can't cut our way out of a structural deficit, but we can begin to come up with new and creative ways of developing commercial property that is not impactful to the neighborhoods that are already congested. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I have anyone else, Nick?
No.
That will conclude public comment for tonight's meeting. Thank you. I'm going to move to item number 4, which is discussion, update, approval for the East Milton Fire Station bid, results in the project budget. Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian Walsh, Chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. Brian Fors from Vertex, the owner's project manager on the project, and Chief Chris Madden are joining the meeting as we speak.
Welcome all. Nick, do you want to present or do you want me to go to Chair Walsh?
Just waiting for him to join us
Okay,
there. Here he goes. Chair Walsh, are you there now? Brian Walsh, you good? Are you with us? There he is.
I am.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. How are you? I know you're here to present on East Milton Station, so the floor is yours to present where we are at. I know you're joined by the chief and Brian, and Chief, you had a busy day today. I'm up in New Hampshire on every news channel. Nice job. I'm not gonna go there. That's all I'm gonna say about today, so.
Tremendous job by the crews working today.
So, that's a first for me. So, Mr. Chair Wallace, the floor is yours.
Actually, Nick, was it your intention to walk through the presentation?
Sure, I'm happy to, if that would be helpful to kind of set the page here and then take it from there.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to comment or participate, as needed.
Great. All right, so I just have a few slides here just to provide an overall update for everybody. Obviously, feel free to jump in with questions as we go. Big picture, as everyone knows, the new fire headquarters opened earlier this year, and the meeting room in the old fire headquarters opened this summer. Obviously, the headquarters is fully operational. The meeting room is starting to be used, and we appreciate folks who are in there. So if you have a board or committee and looking for space, feel free to reach out to our office to schedule a meeting in there. Great meeting room, and there's a warrant article at the town meeting next Monday to even further outfit it to allow televised meetings to take place in there as well. So those projects have been closed out, and we are turning now to the East Milton Station. Just a little bit of history. In March, the select board approved a contract amendment for the designer to design a station. It was previously designed as a single bay station with one engine company. The select board approved a slight change to that design to add a second bay for storage purposes, not to serve as an active apparatus location. So that design was completed this fall, was put out to bid. The alternate encompassed everything required to build out the second storage bay. 9 bids were received in January. Tower Construction Corporation out of Rhode Island was the low bidder. Their base bid was $7.5 million. Their alternate number 1, which was the second bay, is $724,000, which brings us to a total of $8.277 million to design it with both bays rather than just the single bay. We talked a bit about this at the time, but I'll turn it over to Chief Madden to discuss a little bit about the need for the room and the storage, and then we can get into the budget finances a little bit from there. And I'll come back to that, but I'll turn it over to Chief now in terms of what would be used and how the space would be utilized.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight. When I look at the future of the fire department, and these buildings are being built for the future, we don't know where it's going to go and what the mission of the fire department will be. And so when you look out to see where we are, and obviously the changes in climate and everything else, and the mission creep from the fire department, rather, I first started was basically fires and medicals, and now we've gone from fires to medicals to car accidents to hazardous materials to wildfires and today flooding. So when you look out and try and predict the future, it's impossible. So the second bay allows us a little bit of flexibility for any kind of added equipment that we may need in the future. So that's important when you look at this slide here, the current layout where we have everything fits nice, everything's good. One thing that we do have right now is what we don't have right now is an adequate backup. So when you look at each bay, it's pretty full. The headquarters has the shift commander and the squad 1, which is a utility truck that we use for a lot of things. Show the boat, tow utility vehicle, UTV. Bay 2 has the squad 2, which is the brush truck. Bay 3 has engine 1, which is 2006. Bay 4 has the ladder, which is the drive-through. Bay 5 has the spare engine, which is a 99. And then outside storage would be car 1 and car 3, fire prevention. Engine 2 right now has engine 2 only. With the current bay situation, it's not, the floor is not stable enough to hold a second engine down there, so that's why we have it here. And then up at Atherton Street, we have a hazardous materials decon trailer, and we have our engine 4, which is there. So when we look at the second bay. And one of the things that we have coming in the very near future is we have a brand new engine coming, and we have a brand new tower ladder coming. So in the talks with the head mechanic, Charlie Colligan, one of the things that we're looking at why this second bay is so important is he would like to keep 2 spare engines. We're spending $1 million or close to $1 million for an engine right now, and we're getting 20 to 25 years out of these engines. And we need to be able to perform maintenance on it. So when you need to take an engine out of service to perform an oil change or a tire change, or if anything breaks or anything like that, there's a lot of pressure on them to get it fixed quickly, because if anything else happens, then we're down an engine. And so when we look at, the future of headquarters, everything stays the same with the new engine, the new tower. We're going to keep the spare ladder. We haven't had a spare ladder in 15 years. So keeping the ladder, Charlie Colligan and the previous maintenance people have done a tremendous job at keeping that 2006, a 20-year-old ladder truck in service on a regular basis, but it needs some maintenance. So we're going to keep the old ladder with the new ladder just to make sure that we have that spare. And then same with the engine. When we get that new engine the current engine one, which is 2006, so it's 19 years old, will be used as a spare. And we're going to keep the 99, which is, again, running it in great condition because of the work that Charlie and the people down at Central Maintenance have done. So when we look at it, if we don't have that second bay, that second spare engine will have to be sent outside and put outside. And we've done that before. We had a spare engine that was kept outside, and it quickly filled, the weather got to it, the mice got to it, and basically destroyed that within a year. And then you look at just if we don't have that second bay, all the stuff that we have up here, with a utility vehicle, the rescue boat, it gets really, really tight in here moving forward for the future. So I hope you understand that, to keep the operations of the fire department running seamless with the adequate apparatus, we really need that bay just to keep a spare engine. So if something were to happen, we're able to make that change on the fly. Obviously, this weather outside right now, you can't keep anything outside. It freezes up. So that's why we need it. And for the future of the department, the future of the town, who knows what is going to be thrown at us. So I appreciate the time.
Any questions or comments so far from the chief?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add, because sometimes we lose the perspective. The headquarters station and the Atherton Street station were both more than 100 years old. East Milton came online just after 1950. And so the chief's point is extremely valid. We don't do these stations, every 80 to 130 years. And to have just a little bit more room for the equipment, because one thing I know for certain, he will have other equipment. When we talk about flooding, does he have a high water vehicle? When we went up there and handle that, we've got a lot of forest around here in Blue Hills. And does his current equipment to handle forest fires, is that adequate? Is it adequate in the future? It's probably unlikely. So I just want to stress, look, we don't, as a town, we don't do this that often. And to try to plan for 100 years, it's wise to err on being a little bit more conservative. Thank you.
I was going to comment, but does anyone else have questions or comments first?
Ms. Musto has her hand up, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Ms. Musto, go ahead. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
okay.
Zoll.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. Wondering with the spread in the different bidders, just wondering what the spread was like and what the spread was like between this bidder and the next one, and also what the experience is with this particular company with regards to fire stations.
Brian Forrest, if you could take that.
Yes, I can take that one. Thank you for having me. We're with Vertex, the OPM for this project. Like Nick alluded to, we had 9 responses from general contractors on this project, Tower Construction being the low bidder at the $7.5 million range. The bids received, there were, the second lowest bidder was within $200,000 to $300,000 of that bid, and bids ranged all the way up to over $9 million on this bid. All these general contractors were pre-qualified by our building committee. We solicited requests for qualifications by anyone interested parties, and those were fully vetted by the building committee and a pre-qualification committee prior to soliciting bids from them.
And if I may, just as a follow-up, just wondering, have they worked with fire stations before?
Yes, they have. That was one of the requirements, as well as having previous experience with fire station construction. Tower does have experience with Vertex. I do not have personal experience with them, but they've also done a project in Falmouth with the same designer that we have here as well. And that came with a big recommendation from both parties.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen.
Not so much a question as just a comment. Or should we wait for comments to the board later? Or I'll wait for questions for them first.
No, you can go ahead. Any question or comment that you have, go right ahead.
I guess I appreciate the work that you've done. I'm stuck with where we are right now. Unfortunately, timing is everything, and timing is bad. And I personally have a hard time voting for adding something when we're struggling with the operational needs of just the day-to-day. And I'm not just saying the schools, I'm talking town departments. And I just wonder if we could put this off a little bit because of what we're faced with. But I appreciate all you've done, and I find it difficult to do, but I find it fiscally responsible to at least say, because I feel like I'm voting for this over potentially, I know it's debt, but still, I just feel like I'm voting for this over operational needs, and that's my challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. So I just want to comment briefly, is the veteran members know here, and the chief and Chair Walsh have said as a liaison on the fire station building committee since now almost 8 years, hard to believe, but a little bit historical perspective. The police station was built when I was in high school, and just ironic, my father was on the police station building committee, and the police station was initially slated to have 4 double bay garages, and 2 of them in a very similar situation were cut. And little did I know I'd wind up becoming a police officer, and then I'd wind up becoming chief. That issue became a struggle for all of my career, and sure Chief King deals with it today. And if we're not able to fund this now, how are we going to go back and do it? And the point is, to your point, Mr. Cohen, we won't be able to. You know, we've been inundated with emails for the past week over people saying, please vote to support the schools. Well, I've said repeatedly in our meetings, we are a town of numerous departments. And as we saw on the news today, the fire service, just like the police department, are our frontline responders every day. And to the chief's point that he talked about the spare piece, that piece will be kept in the back of the DPW yard on an unpaved piece of pavement, and it'll be useless within a year. And I think we don't very often get chances like this. And I have confidence in Mr. Milano that he will be able to find a way to find this additional $500,000 to add this extra bay, because if not, we will never have it, and it'll be too late for all of us to ever go back and redress it. So that's where I am on it. We do have a motion before us to approve the recommendation of the Fire Station Building Committee for the East Milton Fire Station
So,
building project.
Mr. Chair,
I know, I'm gonna get to that, but
Okay,
I'll come back. I'm gonna come back to you, and I'm just putting the motion. That's just let everyone know that that's there. So go
Got
ahead, Mr. Zoll. Go ahead.
well, I was actually going to let Mr.
Go
Walsh, if it looked like he raised his hand to respond to Mr. Cohen's comment. So if that's what it is, Brian, you can go ahead and chime in, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Zoll. I just wanted to point out that the funding source for everything we've done so far on the fire station project, and including now East Milton, has been part of a special purpose stabilization fund. It was voted by town meeting, it was voted by the town, and it was actually voted by the Massachusetts legislature. That money that we're using could not be used right now for the school deficits or any of the other financial problems that the town has. My suspicion is if a decision was made to start going in that direction, you'd have to go back through the town meeting, through the town, and through the legislature and explain. I'm sure the first question they'd ask, well, did you do the fire stations with the money as we approved? And of course, you know, we wouldn't have to. We expect, and we didn't get to the financial sheet here yet, but you know, we're real close to building the appropriate East Milton station, and I certainly hope you'll be able to approve that. And I just hope that kind of clears up for Mr. Cohen. I'm not sure if he did or did not know about the whole funding difference here. So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Walsh. So, Mr. Chair, thanks
Go
for
ahead. Go ahead,
thanks for
Mr.
recognizing
Zoll.
me.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick, I was going to mention the same thing that Mr. Walsh did. I had a feeling he was going to mention that and probably say it much better than I could, which is usually the case. Also, Brian, the way that your lighting is on your camera, I thought you had a little mustache for a minute, and I was really excited that you were joining the facial hair club, but apparently not. So I just want to say both a quick word of thanks. I popped my head around. I didn't want to interrupt, but at Lower Mills today and saw what was going on. And Chief Madden, is something that you and I have talked about before with this sort of increase of climate change and irregular weather patterns, both from the brush fires this past summer, now this flood. I think it goes to show that as we continue to evolve and grow as a community, we need to make sure that our facilities, both from the school perspective, but also from the first responder perspective, are adequate to deal with the 21st century problems. Certainly I think anybody who's been in the East Milton Firehouse Station would argue this probably wasn't even fit for the 20th century, but you know, we have it and we've been making the best use we can. I think, you know, based on my understanding what the finances are of this, I'm not overly concerned about it. I do think, and you know, we will continue to discuss that our town overall faces a larger structural problem that needs to be addressed, that won't be fixed by denying firefighters and our first responders the kinds of facilities that they need. In fact, I think it would be more detrimental to our town to not provide that, because we would be making a statement about the type of town that we want to live in. So thank you again to the Fire Station Committee, Mr. Walsh, and everyone else who's been absolutely tireless on this issue. I'm looking forward to providing better fire service for our neighbors in the East Milton area, which this fire station will undoubtedly do. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That's all my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Zoll. Let me just look again. I just want to make sure anyone else. So Ms. Musto and then Mr. Cohen again.
I think Mr. Cohen was before me, if he'd like to go. I can't hear you.
Yes, I'm unmuting. I just wanted to say I was no way in any way suggesting that money be moved from the fire station to something else. No, I was not. The debt and everything is just at a point where I just am so stressed out about it. I'm afraid to vote anything new in. That was my only comment. I was not suggesting that at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to say thank you to the building committee as well, and all of the time and effort you've all put in, and to Mr. Walsh especially. He's been there for a long time on this issue. Just wondering if you could just address for people that are watching what's going on with Atherton Street and what the plan would be for that for the future. Because I know when this went forward, we were talking all 3 stations and the costs came in as they did. So I know people up near Atherton Street would be interested in knowing what is up with that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to address that?
Absolutely, Mr. Walsh. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so a great question. Just a very quick refresher for everyone, especially that's just dialing in. When we started this project, working with our owner's project manager and our architect, this was pre-COVID, we had determined that the best pricing we could get for the town would be if we put all 3 stations at once for bid. And using that, and we went to town meeting and explained that and got that approach approved. Then we worked on designing 3 stations, and then we were about ready to go out and COVID hit. And now we had to regroup. I think most people realize that when COVID hit, it did a couple of things. It dramatically increased a lot of costs and created a lot of uncertainty. And the uncertainty, if we were to go out and bid all 3 at once, it would be a project could be 10, 15 years. That uncertainty would make people responding to the bid to really increase their prices. So we said, all right, we can't do this. Let's decide what is the order that we should do. And there was no ambiguity. We had to do headquarters first. That was the hub of everything, the communication systems. I recall that we did a nice video, that some of you probably have seen. And you thought you were in the Twilight Zone when you saw the ticker tape system that they had to handle emergency calls. But in any event, so we said there was no doubt we did the headquarters first. We've done that. Now we're faced with what should we do next? If we're doing one at a time. And the East Milton Fire Station was built in 1950. 3 or 4 years after it was finished, they sunk the expressway, dramatically changing the streets that cross over there. And 75% of the coverage area for the firefighters in East Milton are on, for lack of a better phrase, the Milton side of the expressway versus the Quincy side. And the fire department takes 1 minute to 1 minute and 20 seconds to leave the East Milton Fire Station and just make it over to the post office, which is clearly visible. It's short run. The requirements, national requirements for responding for a fire department is you should have 90% of every address in town you can cover within 4 minutes or less. Well, losing 1 minute and 20 seconds to 75% of your constituents is a real problem. And so now that we have the new location, the piece of land the town bought, which eliminates that issue, they have much quicker access. There was no doubt that in the best interest of the town, both the Atherton Street and the East Milton Station were very, very antiquated. They both needed a lot of attention. But the fact that we could dramatically improve the response time made us realize that we really did need to do East Milton next. And that's what we're here to do. Now, in terms of Atherton, fair question. Thankfully, and I want to, especially to the select board, make this comment. I've found it just terrific to work with Nick Milano. He has really dug in deeply into understanding the funding formula that we have, and he's called it to our attention how it's going to be difficult to cover, for example, Atherton Street. So what we're going to do is we're going to, with your support, finish East Milton, which really needs to be done next, and then regroup. We know that when the Community Preservation Act was passed by the town, they used, in fact, it failed the first time. I don't know if you folks recall, but they kept using, well, we've got things like the fire stations that we'd like to preserve. And they was really specifically looking at Atherton Street with a rock front. It has a lot of value in preserving. So we intend to go after we get East Milton Station going and work with the Community Preservation Act and see to what extent they could fund some of the work done at Atherton Street, and then we'll work with the fire chief, and we'll work with the committee to potentially look at whatever we can do to reduce the cost. But at some point, we will have to come back to the town and say, this is how much we'll need for Atherton Street. But I can assure you, and anybody that's listening, every member of the Fire Station Building Committee is not going to rest until we have hopefully a credible plan that the town can accept to get that Atherton Street station done also.
Thank you.
Thank you. You all good, Ms. Musto?
I am, thank you.
So just a quick follow-up to Chair Walsh's comments. People at home may remember this. Ms. Musto may remember when the town sold the community preservation vote to pass community CPC for the town of Milton, one of the main items that was flown as a flag for the reason to support it was to redo the fire stations. And our former colleague, Mike Zoll, who sat on that committee, the CPC committee, truly advocated very strongly for that. I agreed with him on that. But as of today, not one dime has been spent neither on headquarters, nor will any be spent on Engine 2 in East Milton. And I hope for whatever members are here tonight that are on the board at the time, because I don't think I'll be here when this gets to that they advocate strongly for CPC money, because as a town, we marketed something, we voted for something, we passed something, and the firefighters and the fire service and the men and women of the Milton Fire Department and our citizens deserve that CPC money should be directed to that. Engine 4 is a historic station, and it's my hope that will happen at the time when it happens. So, Mr. Milano, Mr. Walsh, do you have a recommendation on, does someone want to make a recommendation on who you want to go with here for our motion?
Mr. Wells, our Chair Wells, the Fire Station Building Committee did unanimously recommend the two bay bid and accepting the alternate to do the two bay station. I just will note that we did have to scrub the budget a bit to make the two bay station work. We have pulled out some items that could be funded at a future capital budget request. So things that we had intended to be funded through this project would have to be a supplemental ask at a future capital budget, like the fiscal year 27 capital budget, as that would time up well with when the station is expected to open. In addition to that, Vertex has gone back and revised its amendment for construction administration to save the town some dollars there. We have gone to contact the architect to make the same request. And based on the experience on the headquarters building, Vertex felt okay with a slightly reduced contingency. So the contingency that we had planned was 5% of construction costs. And that has been reduced to 3% of construction costs. And Brian Forrest, if you could elaborate on that, just to explain kind of some of the rationale behind that. And then that describes the overall budget changes that we've made to accommodate what the outstanding appropriation is for this project.
Yes, thank you, Nick. And so we wanted to kind of create a roadmap on how we could stay within the appropriation here. And Nick touched upon all of the items that we did. Any items that we could defer, such as certain furniture or other equipment that could be funded by other items, we've now taken out of the budget. And then based on our experience at headquarters, knowing that was a slightly larger project, but we do have the same design team, and so we could kind of translate what the percentage was of construction costs there, and try to expect what our burn rate would be for this project at East Milton. East Milton is a smaller project, so there is a smaller contingency with that, and we were able to drop that from 5% to 3%, like Nick alluded to. It is also it's a ground up construction. There is no renovation, which usually gives me pause or hesitation with holding contingencies, because it's a lot of unknowns when you have any type of a renovation project. This will be more of a strict ground up building. And so we worked through the budget, and we were able to provide kind of a roadmap that would keep us within our appropriation.
And just so the members know that there were two votes taken on these fire station projects, $2.7 million for design in 2019, and then $32.5 million for construction in 2021. So between headquarters and East Milton, our expectation is that the projects will fall within that $34,950,000 that was appropriated. However, as has been alluded to by Mr. Walsh and others, the town, we would need to seek additional appropriation for the Atherton Street project. In addition to the project cost, the hard cost that we'll be paying out. In terms of the debt service will be fully funded through the debt stabilization fund that again, both Chair Wells and Chair Walsh have referred to, whereby debt is declining and the savings from that goes into a stabilization fund and then becomes available the prior debt for library and school projects is declining over time. All of that stays on the books. We continue to tax residents for that amount. And that difference goes into a fund that we can use to pay debt service out of for the fire station projects, as well as the theoretical DPW yard project. We expect that after we bond for the East Milton station and close out the bond for any remaining debt for the headquarters building, we'll be paying about $2.1 to $2 million a year in debt service for those two projects. And the capacity under the under the Hurley Amendment or Debt Service Stabilization Fund is 2.3 million. So we fully expect to remain within that for these two stations. The question and next steps conversation has to begin around Atherton and how the town's going to tackle that one moving forward. But for East Milton and headquarters, with the changes that Brian described, we expect to fully remain under the appropriation and within the capacity of the Debt Service Stabilization Fund.
Thank you, Nick. Oh, so, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chair, if you're ready for a motion,
I'm ready. I'm ready, Mr. Zoll. I'll take it.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. Oops, that my windows stay open. I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Fire Station Building Committee for the East Milton Fire Station Building Project RFP and award the project to, what was the name of it?
Our Construction Corporation.
As
In the same place.
yes.
I'll second.
So motion been made by Mr. Zoll, seconded by Ms. Musto. All those in favor, Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Zoll,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Mr. Walsh, you have a unanimous vote. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for all the support. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much. Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Chief. Okay, item number 5, discussion.
I just lost the chair. Did anybody
Yeah,
else?
me
Or is
too.
it me?
I just demoted him by accident.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
We'll try that again. Here you come.
That's
All right,
going to come up on
let's
the
see.
review.
What are you mad at me or something? I just looked down. I'm like, I'm
Wrong
talking
person.
I'm talking to a screen with nothing on it. Okay. Did I get anything out? Did I get question 5 even out? Or was I gone
No.
before? Okay, so item number 5. Sorry, thank you, Ms. Bradley. Fiscal year 2026 and 5-year forecast, the operating override for fiscal year 2026 and the fiscal year 2026 capital budget. Just for a point of contention, I don't believe we'll be setting on item number 2, the operating override for fiscal year 2026. I do not believe that Mr. Milano is ready that we'll be setting a number for that tonight, but I would be proposing a date for the override to the members for a vote or to discuss. Ms. Bradley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At our last meeting, which I would just like to thank you for making happen with the school committee. It was good to hear from them and hear what their needs and their wants and all that information. During that meeting, I asked both the school committee and Mr. Milano about the money and how much things would cost. When Mr. Milano and I were doing it live on television, which I should never do math live on television because I'm in law school and there's a good reason for that. So it seems like I missed the 1.5 million level services that the town needs. So I bantered about the number 9.8 million. Upon further discussion with Mr. Milano, it's really the number that I should have been using at that meeting was 11.3. Now that could have changed from the last meeting, but I just wanted everybody to know that I had made a mistake. I'm not too egotistical to not know when I made a mistake and say I'm sorry and apologize for that. So my math was wrong. And 9.8 that I was using is incorrect. It should have been 11.3. Now, like I said, that could have changed in the last week since we met. But I just wanted to start the conversation with that. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me this moment.
You're welcome. You're forgiven, Ms. Bradley. Mr. Mahoney, you want to speak to this first?
Sure. I'm just going to share a couple of slides just to reset the conversation, and then I'll turn it over to the board from there. We've talked about this obviously a number of times over the past since July, really. But just to reiterate kind of where things stand today, our revenue budget and expense budget is showed here. Our tax levy increase is going up by the 3.4%. One change we've made recently is to increase our new growth forecast from $850,000 to $1 million based on where our expectations for new growth. So it's slightly more tax revenue than anticipated. Not earth shattering, but it's $150,000. We'll take it. Local receipts forecast has stayed the same. State aid, we have adjusted for the governor's budget that came out in January. And our other funds are our typical annual withdrawal from some other sources of funding. In fiscal 26, quote unquote, level service budget, there is right now, I have proposed the use of free cash for three things: $1 million for capital, $500,000 for stabilization, and approximately $155,000 for opioid settlement purposes. That money is in free cash, can only be used for those purposes. So that $1,655,000 in the free cash column for fiscal 26 encompasses those. If you run that against our expenses that we have forecasted presently, I mentioned the $1 million for capital. The town department went up about 4.7% to $34,392,000. School department increases about 9.44% to the $73,573,000. I pulled out the Blue Hills Regional Vocational Technical High School. We don't have a final number for that still. That's just an estimate based on last year. It's not quite a school cost, not quite a shared cost. So I just pulled that out separately. And then lastly, our shared budget is things like health insurance, retirement, insurance, et cetera. We are under pressure on health insurance, and that's one thing I just don't want to lose sight of in these conversations. Is one of the main reasons the budget increase is so high year over year is because health insurance, we're expecting a significant increase. We had been expecting around 10%. We had our renewal meeting with our consultant on Thursday, and they're really landing at 14% for increase in premiums year over year. So we have that's fresh from Thursday, that is just kind of the trend right now. Medical costs are catching up. People are resuming normal medical activity, and our claims experience had been good the last couple of years, and now we're just kind of reverting back to what should be expected. So when you put that all together, the reason the $9.5 million number is what we're talking about is that's what our increase is anticipated on health insurance. That's what the town level service ask. It's what the school level service ask. So this is just the level service budget and the deficit shown as a result. Obviously, to add a needs-based budget asks wouldn't take that number higher. I mentioned briefly on state aid, I won't go into it much, but our state aid did go up from 25 to the governor's budget by $403,000. Unfortunately, assessments from the state also went up by about $330,000. So that's an increase, meaning our net state aid went up $73,000. The primary driver of the increase on assessments was health insurance costs. The state teachers' health insurance assessment went up by 12%. Which, with our 14% premium increase, speaks to that trend going on. So this could change with the House Ways and Means budget and the state budget that's final, but on the state aid front, not a lot of help from the governor's budget compared to where we were. I mentioned where we were at. I already described kind of the level service budget outlook, where we have some limited use of free cash in this level service budget. But the expenditures that we've described are there. And so that $9.5 million override is necessary at the level service asks if everything is funded to balance. The other thing that we have talked about this a bit again is the alternative of a no override budget. And it doesn't sound like this board is interested in moving forward just a budget without an override. But to put that into terms, in a no override budget, I would recommend much more use of free cash to reduce some of the impact of that. So we keep the first tranche of free cash I've discussed, but we would use $1 million for retirement, $1.56 million for OPEB, more money for the reserve fund, and then more money to just balance the budget. So essentially all of the free cash would be used in this budget, except for $1 million in capital. The rest would basically be funding operating expenses. And even if that were the case, we'd be looking at needing town and school departments to be at a 1.5% increase over their fiscal 25 budgets. For town departments, that's about $1 million across our departments to get down to that 1.5% increase. And as the school department talked about at the last meeting, that's about a $5.4 million reduction for the schools to get down to a 1.5% budget increase. So that's what a balanced budget looks like without an override. It's not a fun conversation, obviously, and people across town and school departments would be affected. But I just wanted to make sure we did point out what that balanced budget might look like. And the chair alluded to this previously, but some of the outstanding questions that remain are, whether to move forward with an operating override, and if yes, then when to put the question to the voters. One option is the annual town election. We talked about that a bit before. Alternatively, a special town election sometime after the town meeting in May or June. And then lastly, the dollar amount to put to voters. In terms of ballot question timeline, the state law requires 35 days notice to the town clerk prior to an election being held. So if the select board wants to call a special election or put this question on the annual town election ballot, you have to do that at least 35 days before that election. And really, we're talking, at least a good 8 weeks so that they can truly prepare and have that ready to go. So 35 is an absolute minimum. Prefer to push that up to 7 weeks or 8 weeks if possible. Mr. Chair, that was really all I had at this point. I just wanted to provide that context for the discussion.
You okay if I comment on this? So before we go any further on this, and I know Nick, you didn't mention, but the schools are still working on a final number, and I know that they're spending a lot of time on it this week. It's still it's a number of unprecedented proportion, and no matter what number we do decide on, it's going to be a difficult number, but I think this board is ready to do that. For my colleagues, since our last meeting, I have a conversation with Mr. Milano, and it was proposed to us from the schools that could we possibly look at April 29th, the town election for the override. Now, I went through I met with the town clerk on Friday. I've gone through every single override we've ever had. Every operational override has always taken place in the month of June, usually the second to third week. The latest, I think, was in June 23rd. But they've all been around the 15th to the 20th. Reason being is you go through town meeting, you vote the budget for the year, and then you bring the question to the voters. In this case, the pink slips would have to go out to the MPS staff by May 15th. Am I correct, Mr. Milano? May 15th. So I would propose to each of you, and this will take a lot of work on all of our parts, the school's parts and the citizens' parts. It's one thing to write us an email. It's another thing to roll up your sleeves and go out and work for an override. I would propose that we hold the override vote on April 29th. We don't have to vote. I think it's on for a vote, but if everyone is fine with that, I will put this on for a vote at our meeting next Monday. Am I correct, Nick? Next Monday night at a private town meeting. I think this is really important that we do this. I know it's unique and it's going to take a lot of work from all of us, but I think in this case, there'll be some things that the school committee and us will have to work out as far as whatever number is selected and voted on. If it's approved, that when we do get to town meeting subsequent to the vote, that we both honor the agreements of what is passed at the override. So with that, that's my comments. I don't know who had theirs up first. I just put back up. Ms. Bradley or Mr. Zoll?
Yeah, Ms. Bradley was first.
Ms. Bradley and then Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you might remember from our last meeting, we had discussed about meeting before town meeting. I don't know how to say that without using so many meeting words. And I was not going to be present on Monday. I also
It can
have,
be any one of the, I'm sorry, it can be any one of the nights. I want to do it on the night that you're there. So whatever
Okay.
night that I know you will be there next week, that will be the night that we will vote the date. If that's, is
Okay.
that okay? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's my first thing. So yes, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. My second thing is I have a little bit of a concern and maybe somebody can alleviate or not have this be such a big issue in my brain, but we meet in a very, very, very small room before town meeting. There is no space to have any public present. If we're gonna be voting on something so big, I have a concern that it's being done in such a small area with really nobody being able to see what's going on or hear what's going on. Those meetings are never recorded. And so I just think with something this big, we need to ensure that we are showing as much transparency as we can. And so I don't know if we use the media room that the school committee uses, and maybe we do it via Zoom or something prior to town meeting. But I have major red flags about a vote like this happening in what amounts to a closet at the high school.
Well, can I comment? Let me go to Mr. Zoll first, and then I'll comment.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Zoll.
That's fine, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I share Ms. Bradley's concern, and I think that we can probably find a bigger space, even if we can't do it online, whether it's the cafeteria or the meeting room, and somewhere in the school that we could meet, where at least we could accommodate a small audience. I just want to comment. First, I want to thank all of the residents who did write. I don't think it's great to just say it's easy to write an email to. People have very busy lives, and a lot of the people that have been writing have kids. They do not have time to sit and watch select board meetings all the time. They don't have time to really keep up. And so the fact that people are engaged and sending us letters, thank you. I've tried to respond to everybody. My inbox has been busy. If you haven't heard from me yet, I promise I will try to get to you in the next couple of days. But what I really want to say is I think this board can make more than just one decision about whether or not we're going to be putting a ballot initiative forward. I think that we need to commit to at least having a level services budget available. I think that is the bottom. And I think everybody knows if we have a level service override, we're probably going to need another override in a year or two. So I think then there can be a discussion about, do we want to have an override every 2 years, or do we want to do one big one this year? But I think we cannot, as a board, it would be reckless as a board to suggest to do an override that didn't at least fully fund our existing staff, including at the schools and including at the town. Anything beyond that, when you're raising people's taxes and you're cutting services, it's not something that I could ever imagine voting for, nor would I ever advocate somebody do it. I've talked before in this meeting about the importance of this town to start engaging in some serious long-term planning. What we've heard from Mr. Milano tonight emphasizes that relying on residential taxes, which by law can only increase 2.5% a year, is not a sustainable long-term strategy for this town. Our town is not structurally ready for the 21st century, whether it's what happened today with the flooding or the brush fires or the fact that our schools are in disrepair and overcrowded. We are not ready for the 21st century. And we are fighting 20th century battles with the state. So I find the fact that we're in this position should not be surprising to anybody who's been paying attention to town government, because we've been trying to be a 20th century town for years. And we're already, I hate to say it, a quarter of the way into the 21st century. So we've got to start really thinking strategically and proactively about how we can increase our revenue, increase our tax base without just burdening residents with higher residential tax bills, because that is not the way. I also want to just say that our schools receive $3,000 less per pupil than the state average. So I am all in favor of some increased transparency. I'm in favor of some increased looks at the school budget. But the idea that our teachers or our administrators are sitting on piles of taxpayer dollars is just wrong, and it's pernicious. And it really, as people think about how they're talking about this issue in your town, remember that our teachers and our administrators and many of our town staff are your neighbors and they're our residents. They are not trying to cheat you out of a dollar. It doesn't matter what Facebook tells you. They are really trying to do the best what they can with a small amount of cash. So please, please, please ask for transparency, ask for visibility. I think this board can do a better job of being transparent and visible with its own finances. Please ask us for that, but please do not attack the people who are doing their best to keep us afloat. And finally, what I'll say is, and I promise, Mr. Chair, I don't have pre-written remarks, but I'm not going to go on and on. But the last thing I want to say is this is not a zero-sum game, and it's not about only the effects that this has on certain populations. Everybody is affected. We have teachers in our school system that moved to Milton to teach in our school system that may be let go, that have been given notice that they may be let go, with young children. We have residents in this town who moved here for the schools, and they're finding out that the things that they moved here for may not exist in a year because we've refused to do this planning. I have a friend of mine who doesn't pay any attention, bless her, to the town politics, who texted me 2 weeks ago saying she has a child who is scheduled to go to the pre-K at Tucker. She has another baby on the way, and just learned that the pre-K at Tucker is going to get canceled if this override doesn't pass. That's for her childcare expenses for another year that she was not planning on. So she's not talking about a $300 bump to her property tax bill. She's talking about a $30,000 bump to her child to her childcare expenses. These are real costs that people are bearing. So we owe it to the citizens of Milton to both have a realistic conversation about making sure that we're not passing an override that's going to make this town worse. And we have to promise them that we are going to change course and we are going to start thinking about ways that we can make this town financially sustainable in the long term. If we fail to do those things, we are failing our residents and we are failing our future generations. And we're going to end up as a town that has, bad schools, low population, bad services, and that's going to affect everybody's property values, the thing that we seem to hold dear more than anything. So please let us as a board commit, at least tonight, to not funding anything less than a level service budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You sure that's it? You can put your hand down.
Well, it depends,
I'm
but
only
yes, I'm
teasing.
sure.
Listen, I'm just trying to move the conversation along. I'm not sure who was up, Miss Musto or Mr. Cohen. Who was up
I
first?
think I
All
was.
right, Mr. Cohen and then Miss Musto.
I share the concern with the speaker earlier tonight that I'm concerned that it's not enough money. Because I'm looking at, first of all, you remember at the end of last year, after the year was closed out, we had a $3.8 million overage that we dealt with creatively. But it still left the fact that last year's budget was 3.8 over. We knew going into this year, 2025, that this year would be trouble too, because we based this year's budget on last year. And I've been going and sitting in on the subcommittee, finance committee meetings, the school committee. And several weeks ago, it came up that we were $2.3 million behind a deficit for the first 2 quarters of this year. So I'm concerned that, that kind of, again, we came up with creative ways to deal with it, but it doesn't change the fact that the budget was off by 2.3 million. So I'm just concerned that we're starting with, I'm looking at the proposed level service budget numbers from their presentation back in December, and we're starting at 67.25 million, and really it should be 69.5 because of that $2.3 million. And that basically it just raises everything. I'm just concerned that we have in the interest of disclosure, I just like to see that $2.3 million. What was it actually? What was actually over? It would make me more comfortable. I also have to say that I do think as soon as we can, we need to vote to put it on the ballot in April because there's so many people, I feel, teachers especially, I hear from, that are on pins and needles. So, the sooner we can at least vote to get it on the ballot, I would have to support. As far as what the number is, I agree with the chair. We have some work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Ms. Musto?
Thank you. I would say, I agree with most of the sentiments of previous speakers. I mean, we're lucky in Milton. We have really great schools. If you've had kids that have gone through the schools, I personally have gone through the schools, and hearing from the different parents where their kids are at different schools in the town, they're getting a great education. And I think that is a testament to the professional teachers that we have, because a good teacher will really make a difference in a kid's life. So I'm really proud that we have such great educators in this town. We have a lot of pressing needs. We have the school needs, we have roads. I mean, anyone who travels on the roads, there's so many potholes. It's just, we have a lot of needs in the town. And so certainly, I think we all agree that we're going to have to, look at some kind of override. I agree that we should probably put this on, sooner than later. So I agree with you, Mr. Chair, about the April date. I do want to make sure that I know Mr. Milano has done some tables that will show at the different amounts on an override what that means, because I think that in the spirit of transparency, we need to make sure people understand what that means. So I don't know if we want to talk about that a little bit today, because if we're going to vote on a number for the next meeting, or if we're going to do that the next meeting, I just feel that we need to make sure we educate people what the amount is, and certainly bring it to the voters. So I want to hear more, in terms of what the needs are from the schools a little bit more as they, go through this process. I mean, I think it's, these are big numbers that we're talking about. I want to make sure that they last, whatever we end up putting out to the voters. You certainly don't want to go out a year later and ask for a large number again. Most people assume that when you go out with an override, whether or not it passes is another story, but you want to make sure you go out with an amount that's going to last for a couple of years. And I think for people that have been around overrides, in this town, they understand that it should last for a couple of years. So those would be my points, just to make sure that in spirit of transparency, whatever we decide on or thinking about, that we do bring those tables out, because I think that's really important, so everybody's on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it seemed like when the schools, and even when we received the needs, the wants of our other town departments, that a lot of those things were one-time items. So, like, for example, the Council on Aging wants a van. Well, that's a one-time item. So if that is expended from the first year, then the second year and the third year, you have those in savings. Or if you spread it out over 2 years, then you can buy it in the third year. I think that from what I saw, there's enough wiggle room in the budget for services to continue. But again, I'm not an expert on that. I'll wait for Nick to let me know. One thing you said, though, Mr. Chair, raised a red flag for me. You said that the schools are still working on their budget. I thought that last week when they presented to us, that was it. That's what they needed. And their level service was at 6.4, and their level service and needs was 7.8. Is it your understanding, or Mr. Milano's understanding, that those numbers are yet again in flux?
So, you all right if I answer, Nick? So I do know, look, I've heard all of you, and I'm fully vested in moving this override forward, doing it sooner versus later. The question is the number. And I don't mean to, because I don't get scared by things. I'm not afraid, but we're going down a road we've never been on. So the schools and Mr. Milano are both, like to think, like I didn't even look at the van, to tell you the truth, Miss Bradley. What I know the schools are doing is they're looking to do everything they can to reduce that number, because as the members here know, we have two issues here. We have a $2.5 million cut, or $2 million current deficit, we have two of our 2.5, as well as the forecast for the next fiscal year and going before. So that's why I didn't put the number on for a vote tonight, because I don't expect to have a final number from everyone until next week. So I didn't mean to raise a red flag for you, Ms. Bradley.
Okay, so we're not gonna get final numbers from the town or the school side until next week. And we're supposed to have a debate about the numbers before the special town meeting?
No, this isn't on for the special town meeting.
No, if we have a meeting of the select board before the special town meeting, that's when you're asking us to decide what the number is.
The date. Oh, we could, if the number's ready, I'd be happy to put both on, but if we're 100% sure that's what's gonna be, I'll put both on, but at least
Well, I think
put
The date, it sounds like everybody's already on board with the
Yeah, but
April
we can't,
29th.
but we just can't vote it tonight because it wasn't on for approval. It was on just for discussion. This came
Actually, we
quickly.
can, Mr. Chair, and Nick can share this with you, but according to the open meeting laws, if all members agree and there's been discussion about it, then yes, we can vote on the date. We could even vote on the number if we all agreed on it, but I
No.
haven't heard that yet. I waited
No.
and I heard Mr. Cohen, Ms. Musto, yourself, Mr. Zoll, myself all say that we agree to an April 29 vote. So according to what Mr. Milano and Mr. Mello had sent me earlier in the week, we actually can vote on that tonight and make that happen. My issue with that, though, is that we're going to be, let me back that up.
Hold on one second.
Wait.
just before- oh.
Wait, hold on a second. I need to ask Mr. Milano a question. Mr. Milano, do we actually need to vote on a number to put out?
Mhm.
We do, right?
We do,
Yes,
we do.
the operating override, unlike the debt exclusion that we spent a lot of time talking about, the operating override has an explicit number in the ballot question itself that the voters see.
And so that leads me to the next thing, which is where I started, is that if we're gonna have that discussion in a small little room at the high school, that is not transparent, that is not recorded. That is just the five of us and Lynn, and sometimes Elaine's in there.
I never proposed that, Ms. Bradley. I didn't put, all I proposed for next week while we were pre-town meeting was that we put the date. But if you're correct, and if Mr. Milano, if you agree with this, I'll make the motion right now that we set the override vote for April 29th, 2025. If someone wants to second that.
I'll second it.
Second by Ms.
Mr. Chair,
Bradley. All
would
right,
you,
so
ta-
go ahead,
would,
just for
would you
point of
take an
discussion,
amendment
go
on
ahead.
that?
You have another date? Go ahead.
Not another date, not
Okay.
another date. An amendment to say, with no less than level
No,
service.
I wouldn't accept that tonight, because first off, we're on school vacation. I'm not voting any numbers saying, I've told,
But
you
we're at
saw,
least,
hold on, let me finish. I've
Go ahead.
answered every single email that came to us. It took me 2 hours yesterday and an hour and a half today to answer every email. And I told every person we would not be voting a number tonight, but that I did think we would be voting the date, but I didn't know until I looked at the agenda this morning that wasn't on for a vote. So I wouldn't accept that as a friendly, but to Ms. Bradley's point, I agree with you. If the vote is ready, if we get a number by next week, and
Yeah,
I'm uncomfortable with you not being there, and I'm definitely, one, I wouldn't do it without you there. It's too important
Thank
to vote. And two, I agree with you on, I was thinking time versus logistics of where we are.
I got you on that, yeah.
Maybe we can find a time next week. I mean, I'm hoping we get through town meeting in a night and you don't even have to go there, but if we don't get through it in a night, then maybe we look at one of our other meetings that's posted either Tuesday or Wednesday for next week and do it at a normal location at a normal time.
Okay.
We can come through with that.
Okay, that
Can
makes
I-
me feel way comfortable, Mr. Wells, so thank you for that.
All
Can
right,
I
Mr.
just
Zoll,
make a
go ahead.
suggestion
Sure.
to that?
Go ahead.
So it's fine if you don't want to accept my friendly amendment.
I'm
I
just
do
not ready to
believe
go
it's
there yet.
important.
Okay, I get it.
I might suggest that we post a time for Thursday also that we don't necessarily have to use. But I appreciate, Mr. Chair, your optimism that town meeting may take one day.
How about this? We'll
I
post
share
every
your
day next
optimism.
week. We'll post every day next week just to cover it. How's that?
I think that that's not a bad idea. And then if
Okay.
it turns out that we need to use an extra day, then we at least have it posted. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. That's it. I know Mr. Cohen has a stand up.
Okay, so motion made and seconded. Mr. Cohen, go ahead. I like the headphones. Looks like a radio
Thanks.
DJ.
Thanks. Helps me to hear what's going on. I just was stating that I support the putting it on the ballot in April just to let everybody know, but I'd rather wait till we have some more information myself personally before we actually vote it.
We're not
So,
voting on a number, Mr.
We're just
Cohen.
voting that, yeah, Miss Bradley's right. So, Mr. Cohen, to answer your question, the two people that I wanted to hear from the most on this, outside of people from the schools, and particularly those in the Milton Educators Association who are most significantly affected by this, because they have to have, if they're going to get pink slips have to be given by May 15th. And if we lose those, if we do, and it's a significant number, as we all know, and that if we lose those educators, that they'll probably go to another school system and it'll be very difficult to bring them back. I think too, though, the fact that moving it up to April gives us momentum. I know it shortens the time and makes the work that much harder. It gives us momentum and a little bit of urgency for all of us to advocate for this. But the biggest person who really swayed me as to wanting to do this was the town clerk, Sue Galvin. And once I met with her and listened to her rationale for it, I went back up to Mr. Milano and said, I'm okay with it, and I intended to bring it to each of you tonight. So I hope that answers your concerns, which is why we're voting this tonight.
And Mr. Chair, just to add on to that, it's kind of ironic that we're talking about such a big deficit and the fact that we would have another vote in June, which would cost us approximately $60,000. It's kind of like icing on the cake. Of course, we're going to try and do things as economically feasible as we can, because that is our financial duties as select board members. So combining it with the April 29th and knowing that our town clerk, who is amazing, can make this happen is just, it's the right thing to do financially, fiscally, and all the above.
And I thank you for that. And I just want to make a point of caution for boards in the future, because it probably won't be us. Hopefully we're all gone by the time they need another override, is that this is unprecedented in that we're going to go to the voters and ask them to support an operational override for the town. And then subsequent to that, we're going to go to a town meeting a week or so later and ask the town meeting to support the number that the residents will have passed.
Right.
And both us, I believe it's incumbent upon us, and I've already said this to Chair Carolyn, I believe she's articulated the same thing to her members. We both have to stand by what we ask the residents for. We cannot go to town meeting and then try and slice and dice what the voters are going to have to make a very, very hard decision on. Because as you know, Ms. Bradley, we've talked about this ourselves about this. I've talked publicly about this. There are some in this town that this number will truly, truly be almost impossible for them to vote yes or not, that they don't want to, or not that they don't care about the town, or not that they don't love the town. It's the financial impact on them and the ability of whether or not they can afford it. And that's why I've been so outspoken on the number. So, did I answer your question? So are we okay? I know, Mr. Cohen, you may not want to vote on that date, but we have a motion has been made and seconded for April 29th. But I think if Mr. Cohen does not vote yes, I don't think we can do it, because I think it has to be unanimous. Am I correct, Nick? If it's not on?
No, majority.
Majority,
Excuse me,
okay,
regular
okay.
majority vote, exclusion
Okay.
required,
Okay.
4 votes.
So, okay, seeing no further questions, motion made and seconded for April 29th, 2025 for an operational override for the town of Milton, a number to be determined later. Ms. Musto? You're muted. You're muted.
Yes.
Ms. Musto, yes. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the town of Milton, roll your sleeves up. Don't write us emails. Now start going and see your neighbors and start working on this and educating them. We will be doing as much as we can ourselves, but We cannot do this alone. The school committee cannot do this alone. The educators, the police officers, the firefighters, none of them can do it alone. It requires every voting person, the citizens of the citizens in this town to pass this override. So thank you. Okay, what else do we have on this, Mr. Milano? I know that was all of it. I think, did you want to touch on capital as well on this?
Just that where the capital budget, excuse me, is still being worked on by the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. We have our next meeting on a week from Thursday, which is the 27th. And then be close to finishing our work for this year's capital budget.
Very good. Moving right along, item number 6. Discussion approve the town of Milton's comment letter regarding regulations for Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A, the MBTA Communities Act. Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I circulated a draft letter a couple of times with the latest version, I think was sent out yesterday morning. I did receive a request to include one additional paragraph in that, so I'll just share my screen so folks can look at that together. It's a reference to, excuse me, a reference to the unfunded mandate law. So for folks, a draft letter is in the packet that's up on the town, the select board meeting page. We did post that earlier today. It goes through and provides comments to HLC for their regulations that they've drafted for the MBTA Communities Act. The letter focuses on the town's classification status, drawing distinctions between the Mattapan high-speed line and other transit that is also defined as rapid transit. It talks about disinvestment in the Mattapan line, and after today's events, we'll see where that goes. It's about level of service and differences between level of service in Milton compared to other communities. Lack of significant differences between the level of service in Milton and other communities that have either commuter rail or adjacent community status. And talks about the statute versus the regulations. And then the new paragraph that was requested this afternoon was that it also referenced that the potential for these regulations to be an unfunded mandate on Milton and other communities. There's a reference to general laws that prohibit or don't allow that the state to pass on costs and obligations to cities and towns without funding to go with them. So that's the one change that was requested. I flagged it here in red so folks could see it because that's something different than the version circulated earlier. And then ultimately concludes with the select board, identifying that the Milton and the Mattapan high-speed line do not belong in the rapid transit classification under the guideline or under the regulations, excuse me. That's a very brief overview. Certainly happy to talk in a little bit more detail, but we wanted to provide that and then flag the one requested edit for the board to consider. And I'll stop sharing my screen. I'm happy to pull it up again if anybody wants me to.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Ms. Musto, Mr. Zoll, and then Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Musto, was I before you? I thought I was, and then, okay, great. So I have just a very quick comment and then a quick question for you, Mr. Milano. So I think that it's outrageous that this is how we're doing business in town, that we have not had any open discussion in this meeting to the point earlier about transparency, about the costs that this is going to create for our town, that we did not receive a mandate to sue the state nonstop. When there was a vote last year, it was a vote on a simple zoning plan. I think it's outrageous. And I also see in that letter language that I had removed from a previous letter, which alludes to a 1968 attempt by Milton that was successful to prohibit the red line from being extended into Mattapan, that was driven by structural racism and the problems that we had in this town of allowing people of color to move into town. There is a long-standing class and racist agenda here that continues to rear its ugly, ugly head. And I would not be doing my job as a civil servant if I did not point it out. So, Mr. Milano, my quick question for you is, how does one get to become such a lucky citizen that they can make whole-scale edits to a letter that the select board's sending without meeting with the select board or talking with the select board? I'm just very curious about this whole process because it seems like we're letting the planning board, and specifically our very own Elon Musk, an unelected person who somehow, for some reason, controls all the levers of government in town, to write our legal strategy. I'm just curious if somebody else from town had a legal strategy or suggestion how they might be able to participate in the letter writing, because we certainly didn't include them in the discussion or the decision making around any of this. Thank you, Mr. Milano.
Thank you. So the letter was drafted by myself and Nick Connors. The changes that are incorporated and track changes and otherwise in red were changes that were requested by select board members. Where that came from, I can't speak to, but that's why it's outlined as track changes. So folks could see how the letter evolved. The template was basically drafts that we prepared, pulling from things that the select board has said before, letters that we've submitted before, and other items. So generally, everything that you saw in regular text was ours. And except for the capacity, the red lines were requests from members to have to be considered for inclusion in the letter.
Well, I'm so glad that my colleagues are so well versed in state constitutional law. Thank you, Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Zoll. Ms. Musto.
Thank you. Couple of points. Just put my hand down. Okay. I just want to say that this is a Town of Milton meeting. This isn't an Elon Musk national agenda kind of meeting. So I really am tired of hearing about national politics in the Town of Milton. So let's start there. Sick of hearing how we're classist and racist, and it's a racist agenda. Because you're bringing up historical information and you're overreading and overreaching. So I'm tired of hearing about that as well. So I think we should stick to history and fact. But I wanted to go through the letter, Nick. There were a couple of little areas I wanted to just run by you. Under trolley history, in the second paragraph, and first of all, I will say that I think the letter is a really well-written letter. So I wanted to compliment you and Nick on the letter. In the second paragraph, just wondering, it says, like the last sentence talks about, it describes, it's the MBTA itself, and it talks about many bus routes and the Neponset Greenway. Sort of reads sort of strange. If you can read that, it feels like it's missing like something in it, Nick, that particular line. I don't know if it's missing a word or something. The way that it flows, just a comment on that is such many bus routes, and maybe it's okay.
We can clean that up. I see what you're saying. It's like it needs a little bit more work grammatically to get the point across.
Yeah, it's just like a minor thing.
No.
And then further down under Mattapan Trolley Investment, about halfway through, where there's it's 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth line, after it says reliance on historic PCC streetcars, and it says many of which have exceeded, I would say all of which, because they all have exceeded their time, right? So I would say that. And then on the, yeah, all of which, yeah. And then the very, very, towards the very end there on, let's just see. The very end under conclusion, on the second, oh, sorry, the end of the first paragraph where it says, undermines fosters, like that whole part
I
there.
struck undermined earlier. It was in there.
Oh, okay.
Already.
What I put is results in an arbitrary regulatory landscape. Results in an arbitrary regulatory landscape. And that was it. Those are just little minor things. When I read it, I just thought might make it a little bit better. I thought the letter was very well read. Very well done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the town of Milton's comment letter regarding MBTA, regarding regulations, of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 3A, MBTA Communities Act, subject to the final comment, final edit by the town administrator. Mr. Milano, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Musto. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Bradley?
I have a discussion first,
All right, Scott, I'm sorry, I just saw that. Ms. Bradley, go ahead.
It's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. The only thing that the town of Milton is saying to HLC is that they want the reclassification from a rapid transit station. So all of the other regulations that were proposed, the town of Milton agrees with. I just find it fascinating that this is the only thing that we are writing to HLC about. Am I reading it correctly or am I incorrect?
Are you reading that correctly?
Okay, so everybody's good with everything else. And when they say that we're a rapid transit, then we're good with all the definitions around rapid transit.
This is just one comment letter. There are others as well.
But from the town, like the one that the select board is signing. This is the only one, right, Mr. Chair?
Good. This is ours. Do you want to add something to it?
I actually do not. I just wanted to get clarification that I am reading this correctly because it is astonishing to me after hearing my colleagues speak for over a year now about this, that this is the only thing that we are writing about. It would seem to me that we would have, it would be a better use of our time to write about things like where this density will be found instead of, 0.5 miles. It seems like it would be better use if we put out there that, we would like to put it on, I don't know, a different part of town that's not inconsistent with the regulations as spelled out in a rapid transit. I just think that there's a lot of other things that we could have shot for here and things that they might actually take into consideration. I think that, to put all the eggs in the we're not a rapid transit basket is just fascinating to me after hearing everybody talk, specifically the planning board talk for the last year about changes that they would like to see to the regulations. So, I mean, I'm gonna vote no on the letter anyways, because I think asking for rapid transit is not is not a good use of our time.
That's your prerogative.
I just think that, I think that this speaks volumes, Mr. Chair, that this is the letter that the select board is sending. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure I got that right.
Okay, Mr. Cohen.
Excuse me. We're just voting on the letter, whether or not to send the letter, correct?
That's correct. I believe
Yes.
there'll be much more
Okay.
besides that. This is just
All
this
right.
letter, yes.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Musto?
Just wondering if Mr. Milano knows if the planning board's doing a letter as well. Because they may focus on different things than we are, who knows? Just a thought.
I shared a draft. I'm not sure whether they intend to, send something similar, something different, or focus on other items, or, send this with other items. I did share it with them as a draft.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the answer to that is yes, but I could be wrong, but I do believe so. Seeing no other hands, all those in favor, Ms. Bradley,
No.
Mr. Zoll,
Definitely not.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes,
myself, yes. Thank you. I keep muting myself, sorry. Okay. So now item number 7, discussion, update, approval. I don't think, I'm gonna defer these. We don't need to vote these tonight. We can do these next week. The only one that I want to do, though, however, I think we're okay. I think we can put these off until just before town meeting on Monday at our town meeting, because I don't see this will be really the only thing we'll take up on Monday night will be just this one to vote on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A through O. And so I'm gonna defer that. And then that'll move us to item number 8, Mr. Milano, Town Administrator's Report.
Thank you. So just Again, thanks to Chief Madden, Police and Coastal and DPW for all responding this morning. When I got an email from the MBTA that the Mattapan line was being supplemented by bus service because there was too much water at Milton Station, I thought the email sounded funny, so I took a ride down, and unfortunately, what we saw was not just a little bit of, meltwater. It was the river coming down into it. So thanks everybody responding for the assistance and get the passengers off the trolley and for offering to assist. And hopefully any repairs can happen quickly and get that back up and running. I will note that Chief Madden didn't mention it, but we had 4 firefighters graduate last week. Dennis Driscoll, Jamie Stillman, Peter Scully, and Kenneth Hamilton completed the academy last week. It was firefighter Driscoll's first day today, so he had a little bit of excitement for day one. So they'll all be doing some training for the next couple of weeks for the first couple of shifts, and then we'll be in line as firefighters. On that, I don't have too much more to add, as special town meeting starts Monday night, 7:30 at the high school. There are a number of articles which the warrant committee did not have time to provide recommendations on or comments for in the warrant. They are wrapping those up. They did a lot of work this weekend, is my understanding, and our meeting tonight. So we'll start posting those recommendations and comments to the town meeting website. And then as any potential additional amendments or presentations get sent in to us, we'll post those to the town meeting page. So if you're a town meeting member or resident interested in what's going on in town meeting, check back. It's townofmilton.org/town meeting. We'll bring you there for everything related to town meeting. And that's really
Nick, I want to ask a quick question about the town meeting schedule, because a couple of people were unaware of this. Traditionally, town meeting has taken Wednesdays
Yes.
off. Can you just explain what the schedule is for the town meeting next week for folks that are watching?
Yes, when we went to book the auditorium, it was booked already for Thursday, so we did reserve Wednesday. So on the warrant, it says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that is the current game plan, although the members may adjourn it to a different day of their choosing, obviously, if that becomes the desire. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday routine that folks might be more familiar with.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Zoll, you want Friday instead of Wednesday? Is that what you're advocating for?
No, I'm with you. I'm like
didn't
Monday,
think so.
one and done, one and done.
Oh,
Let's do one
I'm
and
with
done.
you. I agree. So, okay, go ahead. Anything else, Mr. Milano?
That's it for me.
Chair's report. I have nothing. Public comment response already. Future meeting dates.
Chair?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Bradley. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I could give a great big shout out to the Division III champion boys track and field. Woo! I want to give a special thanks to Chief King, who gave them police escort very, very, very late at night on Valentine's Day when we were driving back from the Reggie Lewis Trackathorium, I guess is what I'm going to call it right now.
The Reggie Lewis Center. That's what
That
it's
one
called.
too.
Yeah.
And it was quite impressive. The kids all loved it. And so the boys won their division. They are the Division III champions. And the girls knocked it out of the park. They are the runners up for Division III. So they came in second. So big shout out to Coach Daly, all the staff over there. And I am just super proud as a track mom that these kids were able to hoist that trophy and run around the track. It was awesome to see. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And go boys and girls track.
You know, you could try and put a little more enthusiasm in your comments. Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Anyone else? Okay, we will not be going to executive session tonight. So item 13 will not. Future agenda items we have next week. And then, Mr. Milano, after next week, what's our next regular meeting after that? Because
our next regular meeting is not till March 11th. So depending on where everybody's at with the budget, we might need to meet sooner than March 11th. So don't get too.
So let's post Wednesday. Let's see what happens on Monday. Let's post. Wednesday's already posted. Let's just. Can we change our location? Like,
if we had to, we could.
All right. Okay. So is that all right with everyone? So let's Miss Bradley, is Wednesday night, a night you can be there?
I will be there with bells on.
Okay, so let's look at, regardless of what happens with town meeting, let's look at Wednesday night logistically, even if we'll be all right if we have to start a little early and hopefully we have a number by then to, present a number and vote on it for, the April 29th vote.
Mr.
that
Chair,
okay?
I'll also be there on Tuesday. I'm just gonna be a little late on Monday. That's the
fine.
catch, but I'll be there Tuesday too.
That's fine. My gut is, we always hope for one night, but it never happens, so, I'm gonna accept too, so, okay, so, hearing everyone's thoughts and concerns tonight, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Ms. Musto,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Bradley. All those in favor, Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Zoll,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We understand that this is an important time in our town's history, particularly with regard to looking at override. Overrides, and as I've said repeatedly, are never easy, but I have great faith in this community and great faith that we can come to a very positive outcome in this, but it'll take a lot of work on behalf of all of us. So thank you all and enjoy the rest of school vacation. Good night. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Nick and Nick. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Good-
Lynn.